Hello everyone! Thank you for visiting our channel. Have you ever experienced such like stories? James and Sarah were introduced by his mother, who worked with Sarah in a shop and had long taken notice of her. "I wish I had such a daughter-in-law," she would say to Sarah, who blushed shyly. One day, when James came to pick up his mother after work, she asked him to drive her and Sarah home. From that day on, James came to the shop not to fetch his mother, but to be with his beloved woman. After a year, the couple got married, but they were in no hurry to have children despite their parents' frequent inquiries. They enjoyed their carefree, unencumbered life, traveling wherever they pleased, trying to make the most of life together. One day, James and Sarah's vacation schedules did not coincide, and luckily, Sarah's friend invited her to visit the capital. And so, she left for 3 days. On the evening of her arrival, she and her friend went to a restaurant. They were drunk and happy, enjoying themselves. Jacob was Brianna's young man, and they were getting married the following year. "He's coming to visit us now," Brianna said. Jacob arrived not alone, but with his friend Ryan. If Sarah had not been in a relaxed state, she would never have allowed herself to behave like that, but alcohol was taking its toll. She was relaxed and at ease, openly flirting with Ryan and dancing with him. Brianna kept reminding her that Sarah was married, but she just laughed in response. She left the restaurant with Ryan and woke up the next morning in his bed. With a heavy heart and splitting headache, Sarah gathered her things around the man's apartment. She looked at him once again. Ryan had a handsome toned body and a pleasant face, expressive and charismatic. All of this, combined with her intoxicated state, stirred up the passion and desire that led to intimacy with him. Everything was great, but it's time for me to go. She pulled on her jeans, which smelled of cigarettes. "I'm actually married." After these words, Sarah burst into tears. Ryan said that nothing had really happened. It was just a vacation romance. No one would find out. During her flight back home, Sarah kept running this thought through her head. No one would find out. When she arrived, her loving husband surrounded her with care. She felt so guilty that she distanced herself from him a little, which hurt James's feelings. He was puzzled as to why his wife was reacting to him with such little interest. A month later, Sarah finally relaxed and began to think that no one would find out about her fling with Ryan. But it turned out to be much more complicated. She started showing signs of pregnancy. She ran to the pharmacy in horror to get a test. And at home, with shaking hands, she performed all the necessary manipulations. The seconds of waiting seemed like an eternity, and the second bright stripe appeared, indicating that there was no turning back. For another week, she pondered her situation. Then she finally decided to tell her husband. The chance that he was the father of the child was very high. When James saw the 2 stripes, he spun Sarah around in a dance of joy. He had always dreamed of having a child, but for a while, he thought he and his wife were too young to plan for one and needed to enjoy their time together. Despite her husband's joy, Sarah spent all 9 months with a heavy burden on her heart. For the 100th time, she counted the days and the likelihood of Ryan being the father of this child. But all of that was just for her own peace of mind. The real result, one could say, would only come from a DNA test. In the midst of summer, Sarah gave birth to a daughter. She stared at the features of the girl until her eyes hurt, trying to find something resembling her husband or Ryan. It was hard to compare. Ryan's face appeared blurred in her memory. Sarah remembered very little of that day. Secretly from her husband, she took a DNA test right after giving birth in the hospital. On the day of their discharge, the nurse gave her an envelope. With trembling hands, she opened the envelope and scanned the text. She burst into tears, covering her eyes with her hands. At that moment, someone knocked on the door, and she quickly stuffed the documents into her bag so that no one would see them. A new life began for the family. James was happy in his role as a father. He enjoyed taking care of their daughter, and Sarah watched with sadness. Over time, she became accustomed to the idea that James was their daughter's real father. When their daughter grew up, James decided to make a gift for his wife, a vacation somewhere by the sea. The ticket was bought, and they slowly prepared for the trip. But trouble came one evening when James was rummaging through the cabinets looking for a certain paper and came across a crumpled envelope without any identifying marks. Inside were several papers. He glanced at them and was hit with cold shock from what he read. Sitting down at the table, he carefully studied the document. A paternity test. His and their daughter's DNA didn't match. The text stated that there were no matches found with the DNA of the presumed father. With the shocking information, he sat and reread the document for the 100th time. He heard the door open, and Sarah shouted from the threshold, "Hi, I dropped Emily off at her grandmother's. Can we go shopping?" Footsteps were heard, and his wife walked into the kitchen, finding James sitting with papers in his hands. She immediately recognized the envelope that she hadn't thrown away for some reason and had kept all these years in her paper drawer. "I'll explain," she began, but James shook his head and yelled that he didn't want to hear anything. No explanations, no justifications. They sat across from each other and cried. A cloud of pain had gathered around them, so dense that you could cut it with a knife. James was most sorry for their daughter. Emily was attached to him with all her heart, waited for him to come home from work, and worried when he left her. She was his little girl who had melted his tough male heart. He decided that he would continue to communicate with his daughter, even if she wasn't biologically his. Sarah begged James to forgive her, although deep down, she knew that it was unforgivable. James replied that he would never be able to forgive her, but for now, they would live together for some time to avoid harming their daughter. Unfortunately, the happy ending of the story is only found in fairy tales, and the union did not last long. James tried his best to tolerate Sarah, reconcile with her, and endure her actions for the sake of their daughter Emily. But he couldn't bear it anymore and moved into a rented apartment. Sarah understood everything and no longer expected a miracle. It is rare for a person to be able to forgive their beloved's betrayal, and James cannot be blamed. He did everything he could, but he could not live with his unfaithful wife. Every time he saw Sarah, he saw her as the person who had betrayed him. Sarah was grateful to James when he allowed her and Emily to live in his apartment for a while. It solved some of her problems, as now she had to be a single mother who had to work hard to support herself and her daughter. James, of course, took more care of little Emily, but not of his ex-wife. Sarah had to go back to work at the store. No constant man appeared in her life anymore, and she couldn't trust anyone anymore or be happy with anyone. With each subsequent man, life seemed to show Sarah that she lost something when she betrayed James. No one could compare to him, and it oppressed her. Sometimes in the evenings, when Emily stayed overnight with her father, Sarah would cry and imagine a happy picture in which she didn't go to the capital, but she and James were together. What do you think about this situation? Share your thoughts in the comments. And thank you for listening to the story until the end. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel and be sure to like this video, as it will help us promote the channel. All the best.